Hey everyone, it is Thursday and I am here with my good friend, man that I've known for a long time, Pastor Kevin McKnight. He is the executive pastor at Evangel World Prayer Center in Louisville, Kentucky. And, full disclosure, this is where I attend church. So, there you go. And Pastor Kevin and I have known each other for a number of years. So, Pastor Kevin, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Well, Sean, it's a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. It's a delight. You've got an excellent thing going here. We appreciate the opportunity to be on with you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I want to ask you, and I'm going to begin with you with the second question I normally ask people, because I know you'll be completely comfortable with the question, whereas a lot of people, their eyes bug out. So what do you see is the role of faith within leadership for an individual?
Well, for me, it's my whole driving force for life. But to think of it just in terms of leadership, there is so much that is there in faith, because really it is a walk of faith to be a leader, especially to lead people, which is what leadership is about. The faith background that I have informs the decisions that I make. It informs the principles that I try to employ. It is the driving force. And so I think it's a vital part. I recognize that there are some people that may not be of the same faith that I am that do well with leadership. But I would guess that probably the principles that they use or employ really are rooted in our faith. And for me, that goes back to the Bible.
Absolutely. I was talking with someone the other day and I was trying to communicate to her exactly that, but I think you just did it far more eloquently than I did at that time. So I'm honest. So what exactly is the role of an executive pastor?
Man, that is a great question. And the reason I say that is because there really is not one cookie cutter job description for an executive pastor.
Okay.
There are two primary streams that you find. If you surveyed churches that had this position named for one of their pastors, you would probably find them in two basic streams. There is the executive pastor that's primarily responsible for coordination of facilities and management of properties, handling and working in the area of finances and giving direction, maybe even handling HR responsibilities would come under their purview, and it would be something that they would manage from a more of a business perspective. In fact, there are a lot of wonderful executive pastors that actually had a business career and then felt called into the ministry, and then God just simply took that gifting that was already there in their lives and used it to the advantage of the church or the ministry. Then there's a second stream, which is where I tend to fall in, and that is, as an executive pastor, more responsible for the coordination of ministries and staff, not necessarily from the HR perspective, but day-to-day activities and responsibilities. And in our case here at Evangel, it also means that I step in at times when our senior pastor, Dr. Rogers, is either away or has other things happening, and keeps a consistency with things like staff meetings, services, etc.
So you really, Dr. Bob does the bulk of the preaching, as I know. So you are the business leader of the church, the organizer, the making sure that the various ministries helping them with, facility, who has what area and how they interact with each other?
A lot of it has to do with coordination, scheduling of events, and the way that we as a staff interact and relate with one another. Making sure that we, as I mentioned, as we continue, um, regardless of whether Dr. Bob is here or not, we're continuing to fulfill the vision and the direction. It's not usurping anything that he has as
Hmm.
far as vision and leadership, but really just coming in alongside him to maintain that and to facilitate it. In a way, a lot of ways, facilitating what happens among our staff and ministries is what I do.
So I have found that in my experience, at least, people, there's lots of divergent personalities, whether it's in business or in church. Um, a lot of people at times will treat church more like home, where they will allow emotions to come to the surface a little bit quicker than they may in a business setting. How do you diffuse that or direct that so to keep the peace, but at the same time keep things moving ahead?
It may come as a surprise to some of your viewers that you would even have these issues in ministry, but you're exactly right. And in fact, we do tend to be a little more emotional, and as you mentioned, kind of have our emotions out on our sleeve because of the nature of what we do. We are very much about people, we're about interacting with people, and the giftings that are in the lives of our staff members does not negate the fact that they too are emotionally invested in what they do. And so, in order to keep that at an even keel, you have to have opportunity sometimes for them to express uh, maybe concerns, maybe dreams, desires that they have in their heart for the work that they're doing. If there is a conflict, it's bringing a calm head to the situation to simply discuss the issues without pointing the finger, without blaming another person, just coming to an understanding of what may have been behind. We're not perfect, and we're not master communicators,
Hmm.
especially when we're emotional.
Exactly.
We tend to say things that we didn't really mean to say in that way. We may be conveying something that's important to us, but at the same time, if we allow ourselves to get too emotionally charged, it may not sound the way we really mean it. So, I try to help people to do that, and we can sit down and discuss it if we need to. Sometimes only with the one individual, but if it's required, we'll get people together and we'll talk about those things. And the nice thing about being in a faith environment is that you generally have people that are on the same page, wanting
Yeah.
to glorify God with their life and live according to those Christian principles that speak to those matters. So that's usually helpful, and it makes a difference.
So when someone has been attending the church, and there's opportunities for them to get involved, but they're not getting involved, and I think that this applies to so many different associations and not just churches.
Mhm.
How do you see, as a leader, um, what do you suggest for people to how to talk to others, how to encourage others to come out of their shell, even if they're not in a shell? Maybe shell is the wrong word, but to be engaged and involved. I used to say, put their hand to the plow, do something
Mhm.
to build relationships with others, yet at the same time help the mission of the church.
Well, one thing I believe wholeheartedly is that people in the church Christian people, will say, are most satisfied when they're doing something that's a tangible expression of their faith. Now, that in most cases is not going to be preaching or teaching. Now, in a lot of cases, it is. If someone has a gifting capable of doing that, such as yourself, that's one thing. But a lot of folks just find that if they can help in what we often refer to as a ministry of helps,
Yes.
simply making happen the things that need to happen to have church, whether that's greeters at the door or ushers or singing in the choir, helping with the maintenance of the facility, however it may be, a person has a sense of satisfaction when they're doing something to live out their faith. So if there's someone in the church that appears to have never made that leap to actually put some feet to their faith, to do something, um, that's where we try to encourage our staff to be proactive. Now we'll do things like, in fact, we're going to be doing it this Sunday. We're going to announce and have available the opportunity for someone to connect with an area of volunteer ministry by filling out a card and turning that in. But like you said, there's going to be those that'll maybe say, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I really qualify. And they'll still hesitate. And that's where we try to encourage our staff to be proactive, as I mentioned, by seeing those individuals and inviting them to be a part of something. Maybe join them in an area of need. If our youth pastor, for example, has a need for someone to simply provide an adult oversight to what happens with the youth as a protective kind of extra set of watching eyes, just to make sure everybody's in the place they need to be and doing what they need to do while the youth pastor focuses on the ministry up front.
Sure.
And they invite them to do that. If they see maybe a personality that would be compatible with youth and the teens and so forth, or maybe someone that just a man or woman who just seems to have that knack for seeing something that needs to be done and doing it, recognizing a need and taking care of it. That's a great gifting for an usher or helping in some other capacity, greeters, etc. And those are just a few things that come to my mind. There's a whole list of ways people can serve. You might find someone that is a very prayer oriented person that loves
Sure.
people. Well, there's a prayer line that would be ideal, and maybe they never even thought about doing that. So sometimes you have to approach them and see. And I would say it's probably true in business too. There's sometimes people are hesitant to get out of their lane, which we all understand the benefits of staying in your lane.
Sure.
If it's time to make a shift and time to do some other things that could benefit you or your organization, sometimes leadership has to help facilitate those decisions and helping people to move.
So talk a little bit about, and I'm going to use the phrase differently. Most people know what servant leadership is, but I'd like you to talk about it from the perspective of, you are obviously a leader within the church, and at the same time, although ultimately you are following Jesus Christ, but your immediate leader within the church is Dr. Bob Rogers. Talk a little bit about the relationship of, to be a leader, one also needs to be a follower, and that really never ends, because so many people think, I will arrive. Well, that's when you've backslidden, folks. So talk a little bit about that.
All right. Thank you, Sean. You bring up an excellent point, because really everyone answers to someone in some capacity. I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Bob for Well, since 1988, when he became the pastor. I actually worked at the church prior to that, but I've served with him the entire time that he has been the senior pastor. And, it's been a blessing because he happens to be one of those kinds of leaders that allows you to use your gifting, put to use the things that God's put in your life. He's not someone that just hovers over you, but releases you to serve. And we've definitely served together for many years. But at the same time, I still respect him as the pastor and someone that I answer to. So, for example, there are decisions someone may ask about a decision that needs to be made. And if I believe that decision rightfully should come from him as a senior pastor, I will not go ahead and make the decision, even though 99% of the time I know exactly what that decision will be, because we've grown familiar with each other and the way we do things through the years. But there's still a respect element to those things, and following the leadership and the line of authority. And there's a protection in that, and there's a safety in it. And I think some people, in their zeal for advancement and finding themselves in a position where they can have some pride in who they are and the authority that they have, will sometimes overstep areas where they need to submit to the leader over them, whoever they're responsible to, and allow them the opportunity. Because here's what I've discovered, even though it's been over 32 years, almost 33 years now, serving together, even though I most of the time know what pastor's decision might be on a particular area, the truth is I still cannot read his mind.
This is so.
And I do not know what information he has received that might guide the decision. So I just don't make those kinds of assumptions in areas that merit that kind of wisdom as far as making decisions. Some things are very on a more trivial level, and certainly we can do those, take care of it and not have a concern. But you have to know when you are in, say, a second position under a leader, you just have to know the boundaries, and you have to work comfortably within the boundaries without it, becoming a hurtful thing to your pride or your dignity, so to speak. And so as long as you understand that, I've found that I have a lot of liberty to do the job that he's asked me to do.
So kind of a personal question. Has there ever been a time where you have, instead of asking for permission, you've asked for forgiveness and made the decision on your own, thinking that, yeah, this is obvious, and then it's come back and you've been like, not what it should have, didn't turn out the way that I thought it would?
I'm sure there has been some situation like that. I truthfully can't think of a story right now to tell, but certainly there have been times when I've had to say, well, it was my understanding that you maybe had already given the nod or thought this or that. And certainly there have been those occasions to say, I'm sorry, didn't want it to go that way, but here we are, we'll make it right.
So that is a very tactful answer. So let's talk about meeting with various department heads or ministry heads when you get everyone together, and the vision is being cast and the plans are being presented, and inevitably someone is grumbling somewhere along the way because maybe they either don't like it or they think that it diminishes their ministry. I would assume you, as the executive pastor, it falls to you to handle those kind of coaching opportunities. How do you handle that?
Well, for me, my first approach is always try to understand what it is that's causing that staff member to be unsettled or upset, whatever it might be, and try to come to some understanding about where they are. Then the next step is to try to explain where that source of disruption or that difference in vision came from. And if it came from pastor, then you have to do a couple of things. One, ultimately, if there's no resolution to the differences, you've got to go with your leader. If you can't comfortably go with your leader, then you have to make a change because
Mm-hmm.
it's not your role as a staff member to change the leader. That's in the hands of the Lord. You let the Lord take care of that. You lift your leaders in prayer and let God handle that. But that's an extreme, and honestly, I don't remember a situation where it ever came to that. But there are situations where you've got to give some better explanation because a lot of times in those meetings, there's not time to flesh out all the details, all the reasons why. And sometimes just taking the time to allow that staff member to express themselves and to explain where they're coming from, and then to take the time to give further explanation about the change, the new direction, whatever it is that's coming from leadership helps to resolve that. It's kind of it's a negotiation, but not necessarily always going to change what the outcome is already determined to be. If you follow
Sure.
what I'm saying,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
helping people become comfortable with it, maybe seeing something they didn't see before. So yes, I have been in those situations on numerous occasions. And I'll give you an example that's just similar to this, and that is we just came out of earlier in the week a staff planning meeting, 3 sessions long, about 3 to 4 hours each. But it was our total ministry meeting. And that included not only the church, but the school, radio, television, all the different aspects of ministry that basically branch out of our church. And it's inevitable in a meeting like that, even though it was several hours, it's inevitable that not everybody gets ample time
Mm-hmm.
to share what they believe God is doing in their department or their ministry, or maybe someone that does get to share kind of swerves over into their lane a little bit, takes some of the thunder of that. So those are all just human things that you work through to stay together. And I do want to say we have an incredible team of wonderful people, and so uh, it's like there's not conflict and all that coming out of it, but sometimes you have to make adjustments.
So what do you think is the most underappreciated leadership skill set that people can improve upon?
Wow, that's a
I
good.
always ask one hard question. I never
Yeah,
know what it is.
you got me there. I've got to think about it. And I think what makes that a difficult question is because there's so many differences in people. But I guess especially because of the church, I think sometimes we underestimate the ability to connect with people.
Okay.
We can get task oriented. We can handle the details, facilitate something in that regard. But if you're not getting people to buy in out of the congregation, out of the church, to join in to add their hands and their feet to the effort, their voice to the effort. Sometimes we, as leaders, at least in a church setting, and it's probably true otherwise as well, we tend to get impatient and decide, well, I can just do this. I can just get it done, and it'll take me less time.
Sure.
But the benefit of taking the time to invest in people and get their connection, their involvement, far outweighs just simply getting the job done. And so I don't know if that's answering your question specifically, but I think that's one of the areas that's very important.
So when you look at the fullness of the Bible and look at it from a leadership perspective, and someone says, I want to live by biblical principles and improve myself, Pastor Kevin, tell me what's the first thing I should read?
First thing. See, there you go again, Sean. Narrow me down to a specific, and I have a whole bunch of thoughts of things that I would suggest. The first thing, and you're going to have to forgive me because I'm human, the actual reference slips my mind right now, but you will know it.
Okay.
It's the command that we were given of the Lord to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And if you start there and you allow yourself first to press in with God and allow God to shape your character and your heart, your life, then your ability to love people and the principles that requires will begin to emerge. So you could take, for example, the book of Proverbs. There's a lot of instruction there about how to relate to people. You can look at 1 Corinthians 13. But of all the scriptures that I think help us to relate to one another, one of my most favorite is Ephesians 4, verse 32. And it says there that we are to be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Christ forgave us. And I absolutely believe that another four-letter word for love is kind, to show kindness. Because when you do that, you're treating people with respect. You are showing that you value them. You are demonstrating love in tangible terms. And then, of course, that same passage addresses if there has been a brokenness to the relationship. Be tenderhearted, forgive. Don't carry that offense. Don't carry that brokenness and accept that that's the way it has to be, but know that it can be corrected and changed, and take that responsibility for yourself and don't blame the other individual, but choose to be active, proactive on your part, and then let God deal with them concerning that. And usually your actions along those lines are going to help melt the heart that may have been hardened towards you, that will enable you then to relate one to another again.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Last question. Well, last question before the final question. So second to last question. Favorite book of the Bible and why?
My favorite book of the Bible, I think, would be the book of Ephesians. I like the opening chapter and the verses on prayer, and also our position in Christ, and the fact that we are in Christ. And then as you read through, of course, there's those powerful messages on salvation found in the second chapter. For by grace you're saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it's the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone boast. Then you go into chapter 3 and you see he'll do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask or think. Chapter 4, you see the giftings of God and how he's established those for the equipping of the saints. And then you go into 5, there's information about marriage and family and relating to Christ. And then, of course, the armor of God and the victory that we have. So it's hard to pick one, but I think the book of Ephesians stands out to me.
That's great. That and what an explanation, working your way through the various chapters. All right, so final question.
All right.
As we are winding down, we're at 30 and a half minutes on the 30-minute show. So this is the part of the show where you speak directly to the audience that's here and those that are watching on replay, and give them some advice as to what you think will help them to become a better leader.
Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure to be with you and have this opportunity. And this is really a wonderful opportunity now to speak to those of you who are watching, whether live or if you're watching this later. I just want to say this: don't judge people too quickly. Instead, try to understand people. Most people are not against you. Most people want to be able to work together as a team. Some of them have never been equipped or taught how to do that. And as a leader, you can nurture them. And so see yourself not just as a manager, not just as a director, but see yourself as a shepherd. See yourself as a coach, someone that can help and encourage someone to come along and to be a part of the team that you're on and that you're leading. If you will not prejudge someone based on the tone of their voice, their disposition, or even their gestures, and you'll allow yourself the opportunity to know them and understand them better, most of the time, you'll recognize where it is they're coming from, and you will then be able to move along together in the direction that your organization, your ministry, whatever it might be, needs to go. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much. It's been great having you here on the show. You are a wealth of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. There is no doubt about it at all.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I so appreciate what you're doing and this platform that you have. It's making a difference, I'm sure, in the lives of people.
Thank you so much for that. So everyone, that is Litvak Leadership Live for today. We'll be back tomorrow with our Friday episode. Different person, different geography, but we're still going to be talking about leadership. Everyone have a blessed day.